Hey guys, it's Selwen here, bringing you the old Moonfi, now with extra sparkles. Isn't it a glorious chicken? So what's it all about? In Balance, it's all gonna be about resource play, called Astral Power, a static type of resource. No longer there's the moon and sun cycles. Instead, you're gonna be building Astral Power, or AP, but let's not call it that, with abilities like Wrath building 8 and doing some damage, Lunar Strike working in the same way but longer casts and cleaves, plus your artifact ability, the moon phases, new moon, half moon and full moon, each doing more damage, and Astral Power. That Astral Power is then going to be spent on powerful abilities like Star Surge or Starfall, costing 40 or 60, big hitters and giving you lunar and solar empowerment, increasing the damage of both Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike, or stellar empowerment in the case of Starfall, increasing your dot damage, that is from Moonfire and Sunfire, just something to keep up or use on the move. And your cooldown, Celestial Alignment, increases your overall damage by 30% and increasing Astral Power generation by 50% on your Wraths and Lunar Strike. And finally, Mastery increases the empowerment and Astral Power spenders damage. Now, talents, there's really only two builds to use, your optimal single target one and multi-target or mythic plus one, with some changes here or there. There's also some mashup of both of those builds that can be used, but these going to be based around your wrist Legos. In the first tier, you want Star-Lord, making your empowerment passives more powerful by reducing the cast time by 20%. Next, you can choose whatever. Displacer Beast is best when there's mechanics that you need to move away quick, but Wild Charge can work as well depending on the fight, as the cooldown is shorter and doesn't break your Boomy form, so see what works best for every given moment. Next again, you can choose whatever. Feral Affinity is the most useful for the movement increase. The following tier is just utility choices. For raiding, doesn't really matter as much, depending on a fight obviously, if there's adds or specific mechanics that require you to use a specific one. So you will have to see for yourself what to choose and when. In general though, go for what you prefer. 5th tier, Incarnation, Chosen of Felune, for an improved Celestial Alignment, which is your main CD. It makes it last longer and is more powerful. Next tier would be Blessing of the Ancients, providing 2 buffs that you can switch in between. Blessing of Felune, increasing the generation of Astral Power through Wrath and Lunar Strike, or a Blessing of Enchi, a passive Astral Power generator. Shooting Stars works great if there's any sort of multi-dotting going on for long periods of time, since your dots will have a chance to proc a Shooting Star, doing some damage and generating Astral Power, so great on 2 targets and above. A good example would be Fellhounds of Sargeras, but something like King Garath, where there's only brief periods of cleave, Blessing of the Ancients would be better. Just some examples. And finally, Nature's Balance would be an easy choice, making your Wrath and Lunar Strike increase the duration of your Sunfire and Moonfire respectively. You will still need to refresh them, but you will delay that refresh, at least Sunfire, saving you global cooldowns for your other abilities. That said, like I said previously, if you have your Lego wrists, you can actually take Stellar Drift even in single target situations, because of 2 reasons. One, it increases your Starfall damage greatly and allows you to cast inside of its circle while moving. Its damage will even surpass Star Surge. With the Lego, you're gonna get free procs between your uses of Star Surge and Starfall, meaning it will provide a DPS increase not only by offering better numbers, but also allow you to cast on the move on a variety of different boss fights, and in turn, not lose out on so much DPS. More on that later. Now, as for your multi-target build, first tier, it would stay the same for sustain AoE fights, but in dungeons or any other multi-target situations that would work, Warrior of Felune can be somewhat useful if you want a burst for those instant Lunar Strike or in need of aid in movement. As for the Trance or Force of Nature, they also have their niche in some Mythic Plus, is not just a leveling talent, as you can make use of their taunt to sometimes save your group or tank from dying, such as in the Necrotic affix and some others, but their uses will be too far in between, so is a very small niche. You also want Soul of the Forest instead of Incarnation if it's pure AoE, mainly for the reduction cost of Starfall. Stellar Flare has its use as well if there's an opportunity to multi-dot. It can work great as it works as a more powerful version of Moonfire, but is a separate dot. An example would be Fellhounds again, or the Coven of the Shivara, but to make it work properly you would need your talent Lego Ring, as without it your Starfall won't have a great uptime for such fights, since it's only worth to take once you have Stellar Empowerment up, which comes from Starfall. Shooting stars for the same reasons as previously, more targets you get, the better it will work. Astral Communion will kinda also follow the same idea as Warrior of Elune, good for burst to get the Starfall immediately in there. For most situations though, Shooting Stars will be better. And Stellar Drift, obviously. Fury of Elune looks really amazing, but it's pretty useless. Now let's talk about your regular single target rotation, starting without cooldowns, and then go over them and how to open in boss fights, and then all of the talent changes. So the first thing you want to do is apply your 2 dots, Moonfire and Sunfire, and basically just keep them up. Refreshing below 10 seconds will be enough. When using Nature's Balance will make it less of a nuisance. Then you want to start building Astral Power for Star Surges. It is your highest hitting ability in single target, plus provides you with the empowerments. The best way to do it is through your artifact ability New Moon. You can have 3 charges at any given point, but each charge is going to contain 3 different abilities, each ever more powerful than the previous. So after you use New Moon, you get Half Moon, the same but more powerful, plus more astral power. Then finally you get Full Moon, hitting the hardest, plus splashes or cleaves all around the target. The game always records what you just used, so management of those specific moon phases is pointless. Just don't let the charges sit at max, and pretty much use them as they are available, as long as you won't overcap your resource. So after you use those 3 charges, you gained a lot of astral power, so you can finally use a Star Surge and get empowerments. As for Star Surge, you pretty much want to use whenever it's available, so you can always use the more powerful variants of Wrath and Lunar Strike. However, there is some benefit in pooling astral power, as in saving that Star Surge for a later use, either to combine with the upcoming CD that we're gonna talk next, Bloodlust, pots, or even trinkets. The other benefit in saving it is to use when you're gonna need to move during a boss fight, since it's instant and you can use while on the move. Now that said, when pulling, be mindful of overcapping astral power. That comes above all. So now you gained the empowerments, and there's really not much to them. They have 3 charges, so you also don't want to overcap them, and Wrath and Lunar Strike are gonna do more damage and cast faster, so just use them. The order of them doesn't really matter. Optimally, you only want to cast them with the empowerments, unless you happen to be pulling astral power. Without the empowerments, however, you only want to cast Wrath. Lunar Strike is always out of the question, but when empowered, it is indeed worth to use. And then just keep it up. Casting those spells will provide you with more astral power for more Star Surges, which in turn give you more empowerments. Keep your dots up and keep using your Moon spell. In the middle of all of this, you can delay those said Moon spells after you consume those empowerments. As long as that's 1 or 2 charges, it's fine. It only takes priority above them if you are about to reach the 3 charges, and you don't want that to happen, but instead keep the cooldown rolling at all times. So what about Incarnation or Celestial Alignment? Well, is your only cooldown and pretty powerful. It's giving you a damage increase, more astral power and haste from your artifact traits over time. So how do you open up? But before it, Blessing of the Ancients, which I haven't talked about. You pretty much just want to keep it with the Blessing of Elune, as it provides you with more astral power from Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike. Blessing of the Ancient is only worth the use if you're not going to be using those spells for any reasonable amount of time, which is pretty rare. So often when you are AoEing with starfalls and applying your dots, or there's gonna be a lot of running around or a big intermission phase, you can change to Enchi in those moments, but if you're gonna be AoEing, you're gonna have shooting stars anyway, and fights with so much downtime are rare. You could technically change between every time you aren't using those set spells. The problem is that the cooldown is 15 seconds long, which screws it up. However, when you start up a fight, you have some time to prepare, so you can indeed start with Enchi. You're gonna do mostly moon spells, so it doesn't really matter. Change it even before the pull timer or close, because again, the cooldown. And don't worry, it doesn't have a global cooldown, so you can change whenever. Then to start up, and when you are about to start up a boss fight, you can precast a Wrath. If you have a good amount of haste, you might even be able to cast a new moon before the pull. If you're not sure, just do a pre-Wrath. Obviously pot here as well. Then follow with new moon. Casting it right off will allow you to get the cooldown rolling right away, and in the end get more uses. Since next you want to apply your dots, as before, Moonfire and Sunfire. Do half moon for more astral power, and only then you pop Incarnation. This way, when you enter its window, you can go immediately for a big star surge, followed by full moon. You get your biggest heroes within its window without wasting any of its precious uptime. Blessing of the Enchi was also providing you with some extra astral power, but now you change it back to Elune and keep it there, and go for your empowered spells. So Incarnation is pretty simple to use, nothing much changes. Some priorities will though, since you get 50% extra astral power from Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike, but also 35% more damage. Meaning you can technically prioritize Star Surges for a more bursty approach, but overall it's better to instead place your focus on your empowered abilities and Solar Wraths, and only use Star Surge near the cap, so around 90 plus. This way, you overall gonna generate more astral power, which will equal more Star Surges in the long run, even after the cooldown goes down. So not like your regular rotation that you might just be jumping from spell to spell, and spell priority doesn't really matter and is all about smashing whatever's available with some resource management or charge management. Now in mid fights, the only thing you want to keep in mind is to start with as much astral power as you can. The same follows for full moon if possible because of the damage increase. The other thing is to make sure that your dots were just refreshed, even if you're using nature's balance, so you don't waste precious uptime to refresh them. So just before it becomes available to use, you need to do all of that preparation. And that covers it. Now, if you have the LEGO wrist, you can use Stellar Drift in single target, and you want to fit Starfall during your rotation. How will that work? Well, the LEGO will make it so that Star Surge has 20% chance to make Starfall free, and Starfall has 20% chance to make Star Surge free. With Stellar Drift, Starfall actually does more damage than Star Surge, plus it provides you with Stellar Empowerment, increasing your dot damage by a large margin. So with this setup, everything stays really, you simply want to cast those free casts on Starfall. Plus, since it allows you to cast inside of its radius, you can pull astral power for such moments and use it when you do need to move. And one of your biggest problems as a caster is removed. Although now you're gonna have to refresh your dots much more frequently. Stellar Flare is only usable with this setup, since also benefits from Stellar Empowerment, but only worthwhile again if there's 2 targets present, and just keep the dot up like your other 2. As for multi-targets is where the meme fest starts to crop up. So AoEing in balance is pretty easy, be 2 targets or more. Your priority will be on keeping up dots on all targets. Sunfire applies on all nearby, so you only need to worry about Moonfire. Then build Astral Power for Starfall, pop it, watch all of those numbers and fill in with your moon phases or wraths. If there's more than 3 targets, you can use Lunar Strike for the cleave, and make it that 4 targets or so. But keeping dots and Starfall is the priority here. Just be mindful if there's any priority targets that might require our focus a little bit, so put a Star Surge here or there. If you have Warrior of Elune or even Astral Communion, just use in the beginning to get Astral Power quick. Now that is without Legos, because if you have Lady and the Child Lego that improves your Moonfire plus your already present buffs to it, it will deal more damage than Solar Wrath. at least without empowerment. But since you're gonna use Starfall anyway, there's none of that, meaning on 2 targets and above, all you're gonna do is Sunfire, Moonfire, Starfall, and just spam Moonfire. That's all you got to do. So in fights like the Caravan of the Shivara, you get rank 1 DPS like this by casting 1 spell. Isn't it amazing? You will still use some Moon spells or Wraths for Astral Power for Starfalls when needed, and some Star Surges if you cannot hit the 2 targets, or you get a free proc from your other Lego, and then obviously use the empowered version of Wraths, since it will beat the one and only Moonfire. The life of a balanced druid, man. And that covers your rotation. Now, what else is there to talk about? Not much. In the end, it's all gonna be about weird priorities like these Legos with the almighty powerful Moonfire to pull the best numbers. But in most circumstances, and most of you in single targets, there's not a lot of complexities. Using your cooldown appropriately is where most of it is gonna lie, and timing all of your spells perfectly during it and others to mill your windows. Movement is gonna be a big part of it as well. Before I mentioned pulling Astral Power for Star Surges when you do need to move, and is something that you should do when possible, unless you can use the Starfall build. If all else fails, remember your Moonfire and Sunfire, okay? Just use them when you can cast anything else, all the rest is just kinda spammy. As for stats, it's all gonna be about stat mastery and haste, as it scales fantastically with balance. More mastery you get, more raw damage you're gonna do for both your empowerments and your spenders. Haste is just gonna allow you to get faster global cooldowns, faster ticks, which in the end is gonna mean more Astral Power and more damage. Above all, that's your priorities. Your other stats like crits, versatility won't provide as big of a benefit. The same for intellect or item level, as mastery will give you more damage there. So sometimes switching in a high item level piece is worse if you're gonna lose mastery. Your tier stat is pretty boring, passive damage or haste, so not much to talk about. As for Legos, I think I went the most important ones already. You also have your helm that you want to keep your Star Surges rolling every 5 seconds, which you're probably gonna do anyway. Pulling, however, is gonna hurt it. And that covers it all. I'm gonna set my UI and tell me when profile in the description, so check down below for that. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. I hope it was helpful. Have a fantastic day everyone, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.